Hi, I think, to the probably two, three. Well, there's one person watching so far. Hello there. It's been a while actually since I've done one of these things. But yeah, as you can see by the title, I basically just decided to do a live stream on. Patrick, the news earlier in the week that Patrick Roberts has extended his stay at Sunderland until the summer of 2026 with the club option of an extra year. And then obviously just assessing Sunderland's start of the season. Just we're now 16 games into it, and I wanted to sort of go back and look through the fixture. Not necessarily look through the fixture, look through the results, and just sort of assess where we are because we're at the November international break now. This is the last international break of 2023. The next international break's not till March. So I think it's a good time to sort of stop and reflect and just to see how we've come along so far, to see the level of progress that we've made, basically. And I think we've done real. And then, spoiler alert, I think we've actually had a pretty good start of the season. But yeah, so I mean, there's not many people watching at the minute, but I'm hopeful that will change, obviously, as it goes on. So leave comments in the live chat. See what you want to say. Is there any questions you want to ask? I can answer them, and we'll just sort of wing it and as we go from there. So yeah, where to start with this one? So if I get up at the league, well, let's talk about the main news first of all, which is that earlier in this week, Patrick Roberts. Let's see if I can get this up here. Patrick Roberts was confirmed to have signed a new contract, which was running until the summer of 2026, with a club option of an extra year. So let's quickly get the statement up from the club. Let's have a look. Patrick Roberts react. Oh, hang on. No, that's not what I want. Saying Patrick Roberts reacts to new contract. No, that is not what I'm after at all. So, sign your contract with. Oh, yeah, here we go. Right, okay. Well, just while there's not as many people watching at the minute, let's actually read the statement. So, Sunderland winger Patrick Roberts has signed a new contract with the club. The 26-year-old has committed his future on Wearside until summer 2026, agreeing a long-term deal that includes the option of a further year. So that bit is the article I've got is the link to the video. So let's have a quick check. Yeah, here we go. Latest news. That's what I want. So club option of a further year. Roberts moved to Wearside in January 2022 and made an instant impact, featuring on 17 occasions as the Black Cats earned promotion to the Sky Bet Championship via the EFL League One playoffs. The forward scored a last gasp winner, try saying that 5 times fast, to defeat Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough Stadium in the semi-finals, prior to producing another standout display when Wycombe Wanderers were beaten at Wembley Stadium. Roberts continued to be ever present during the club's return to the second tier, which culminated in a top six finish as he contributed 5 goals and 7 assists in 42 league outings. The former Fulham and Manchester City winger has featured 14 times during the current campaign, taking his club appearance tally to 79. After putting pen to paper, Roberts said, I have enjoyed every moment of being here and I'm delighted to get the deal done. The supporters have been great with me and it's been an enjoyable journey so far, and long may that continue. Sunderland is a huge club with huge expectations. I can't wait for the next few years together, and hopefully we'll have more success along the way. Sporting director Christian Speakman added, Patrick has been at the heart of our progress throughout the last 2 seasons, and he has grown into an important member of our group. He possesses some elite qualities, and at the age of 26, we firmly believe he can continue to develop, improve, and evolve. We are really happy that he has signed a new deal, and his commitment to the club not only signifies his belief in our progression, but also our constant pursuit to improve. So here we go. So we've got about 5 people watching. So the first commenter comes from Acacia, Sheffield Wednesday's biggest fan. All right, Bowers. Yes, I'm not doing too badly. Acacia, looking forward to being back. Looking forward to being back with you and Paul against Huddersfield. Yeah, likewise. Obviously, I was, as you people who probably saw from my reaction of the Birmingham game, I wasn't there. I was at my aunt and uncle's who live in Manchester with me because my 2 cousins have birthdays within 4 days of each other, basically. So it was nice to be able to just spend a bit of time with them, which was I was gutted to miss a home game, but obviously stuff like that is more important. But yeah, case yeah about Chef Wed, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was, but at the same time, I did get to watch the game at least, so that was something else. Right now, we're starting to get some comments. JW. Ren White Spheres. Yep, I love that. Absolutely love it. And Tane, as Man Mistake would call him. You're right, mate. Yes, I'm not doing too badly. Let's see if Thane's going to actually be positive in the comments. Bless him. I would say subscribe to Thane, but sadly, subscribe to Thane ME too. Even if you're not into gaming content, just subscribe anyways. I sound mad. But yeah, in case you're right, mate, no Thane, no time, no see. So I'll very quickly get my thoughts on the Patrick Roberts contract that was signed. As the contract saga kind of rumbled on, there was suspicions in my mind that we were going to sell him in January, and I think that the longer it went on, the longer it did continue to not get resolved. That was the fact he would go in January would be a more distinct possibility. I mean, Southampton were credited with an interest, weren't they? I believe it was an offer totaling £5 million in the summer. So I thought that we would certainly sell him in January if he didn't sign a new deal. Thankfully, that's not the case. That's not an issue now. He has signed a new contract. Maybe I'm being a bit greedy here. I would have liked it to have been a 3.5 year deal with the club option of an extra year. But beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. Given the fact that Roberts' previous contract was expired at the end of the season, I think giving him 2.5 years basically with the club option of another year is a good thing. And it's definitely a sig statement of intent that we are able to keep players like this. I know Roberts, in terms of goals and assists, isn't quite there. His numbers are still leave a bit to be desired. But I think in terms of I think he's one of our better players. I think he's a really, really good winger. I think the talent he's got with the ball at his feet, I think is something else. It's ridiculous. I think if we can just add a bit of goals and assists to his name, then I think we're in for a real treat with this fella. But we all know his quality. I'm a big fan of Patrick Roberts, and as in case you pointed out, yeah, Lauren is still buzzing that Paddy is staying. Yeah, Lauren Kenny, who's a friend of mine, she is a Sunderland fan, and she absolutely adores Patrick Roberts to the point where she fangirls and fancies him. But she will be absolutely buzzing with that, I am sure. Like I said, I'm very happy. So in the comments, quickly, anyone, what do you think about Patrick Roberts staying? Yeah, 10 people watching. What do you think about Roberts staying? Let me know in the comments or in the live chat. I'm very happy about it because the one thing I would say is, even though we have been pretty good at tying players down and tying players down to longer contracts, if you look at the players off the top of my head that have happened, it's Anthony Patterson, Trey Hume, Dennis Sirkin, Dan Ballard, Luke O'Nien, Dan Neil. Now, have you noticed a pattern there? They're all deeper players. Dan Neil does get forward, don't get me wrong, but he's playing in more of a deeper role with Pierre Ekwa predominantly. And it's mainly players that are deeper, which I suppose you could argue in terms of finances is cheaper to get them on newer contracts. Robert is the first attacking player that we've managed to tie down to a new deal. So Brendan Catamol, love that name. Absolutely love it. Hi, Michael. I hope you're doing all right, my friend. Thane says, hopefully we'll start seeing the best of him now his future is sorted. I'm a huge Roberts fan, but I've been disappointed with him so far this season. In terms of goals and assists, I would certainly agree with that. I think he's starting to get back to his best, or get back to better form, I should say now. But yeah, I mean, I still think he's a good player, and I do really. I think that his performances this season not quite been as good as last year, but I still think they've been good enough to warrant him being in the team. Right, Keisha says he needs to be careful getting booked against Plymouth though, because we don't want him to do a bad tackle. Is Roberts on? Hang on, is Roberts on 4 yellow cards then? Well, he was on 1 yellow card because of that numpty of a referee against Birmingham that decided that being sliced open by Leandro Bacuna didn't warrant Bacuna getting a yellow card, and somehow Roberts does, which is absolutely insane in my opinion. Absolutely pathetic. Daniel Moore, hello. Yeah. Acacia County, no, just 1. Oh, okay. No, sorry, no, he's on 2 so far. Right, Acacia, is he on 1 or is he on 2? You're confusing me here. But I just don't want him to get booked again. Well, Lauren certainly won't put it that way. But yeah, I mean, so the good thing is because Roberts is the first attacking player we've tied down, it proves that we can keep players that will probably cost more wages at the club. Obviously, the only player that we've really lost that was ours was Ross Stewart. I know we obviously lost Ahmad, but he wasn't our player. He was on loan. So we'll wait and see. David Phillips makes a good point. I think the contract was on his mind, which is why he didn't start the season in the best form. Yeah, there's a possibility of that. We don't know. I remember there was a case when it was our first year in League One, and Lyndon Gooch had his contract the same as what Josh Madger did, where one showed loyalty, one didn't. But anyway, no, both of them were in the last year of their contract going into the first year of League One. Whereas Gooch, I thought his best form was when he was playing for a new contract, and then his form dipped after he signed one. But so it's weird how it works, isn't it? But it could be the opposite with Roberts. We don't know. Doug Out Football Channel. Hello, Michael. Hello, mate. How's your partner and your child doing? Doug's a great lad. I've spoke to him before, and he's a father now. So I know it's a little bit belated, but congratulations. Let's see. Acacia. Mowbray absolutely loves having Paddy at the club. He's just not the same without Ahmad, though, as he wasn't that great against Swansea last week. We played Birmingham last week, but I do get your point. I think that it is an interesting point with Roberts because he and Ahmad had such a dangerous partnership together that I think that Roberts certainly was going to be affected by Ahmad not being there, which kind of brings up the point about whether Ahmad could come back in January. We don't know, do we? Thing. Apparently, Roberts is the club's teacher's pet. Yeah, but I've heard that before myself. Doug says, us three are all great, buddy. Cheers. Yeah, thank you very much. And please win the Carabao Cup because I can't stand them lot up the road winning it. But yeah, so yeah, what do you guys think? Anyone else who's watching? Well, there's Marion Trowles. Again, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. But there you go. Brendan Midge. Robert is only on 2 yellows according to Flash Score app. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, what do you guys all think about Roberts? I think it's good that they finally got resolved, and it means that he's on the same length of contract as Clark now, I believe. But he's just got an extra year left on his deal. So there you go. Doug says we will do our best. Yeah, please do. Please do. Like, please. I don't want the Mags winning any trophies. But yeah, okay. So with Roberts, no, I'm very, very happy about that. It's good to get that out of the way. It's good to get him signed, sealed, delivered. I mean, and as one of the comments from Speakman said, yeah, it signifies his belief in our progression, but also our constant pursuit to improve. And hopefully, this means as a club, we won't just stop here. We want to try and keep progressing and keep pushing forward ahead of, and especially ahead of January. And while we're on the live stream, we might as well talk about January a bit, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. So, yeah, that's the first bit out of the way. Patrick Roberts, where I've rambled on for 11 and a half minutes, basically. So, what I was going to say was, let's see if there's any more comments. Thane, all right, Marion. Okay, so the next bit I wanted to sort of sorry, my voice went a bit weird there. The next thing I wanted to look at was just look back at Sunderland start the season and just assess where they are. In fact, before I do, let's address Daniel Moore's question and hope you're all right, my friend. What do you think about Everton's point deduction news? I know it's not Sunderland related, but it's an interesting development. Put it this way, for next season it could be Sunderland related because it depends if Everton get relegated or not, or we might go up. It just depends. But what's happened with Everton? And for those of you who don't know, apparently Everton are facing a minus 10 points deduction, basically. But what do I think? Well, I like Everton a lot as a club. I think where they've been, especially with the way they were with Bradley Lowry, they were so impeccable. A lot of their fans. It's a shame what's happening at Everton. It's a massive club, one of the biggest clubs in the country, and it's a disgrace how they've let themselves get to this point. But I mean, the thing I would say is, even if they do have a minus 10 points deduction, they'd only be, I think it's 2 points off 17th, because then Luton would move up to 17th. I think Everton are going to appeal the decision, but I don't know whether it's obviously going to. I don't know whether the decision's going to change from the FA or not, or whoever dished out the points deduction punishment. But in general, yeah, I think it's a disgrace what's happening, and I think it'll be a shame if Everton get relegated. But tell you one thing, though, if Everton get relegated, then I think financially they could be screwed because they're already in a lot of debt as it is, even with the Premier League money. Imagine what it's going to be like if they get relegated to the Championship. It's typical that Everton get punished, but the likes of Newcastle, Chelsea and Man City get away with everything. More money definitely talks on and off a pitch. Thane, I wish I could disagree with you, but I can't. Unfortunately, I think that is the way football is these days. It's a really big shame, isn't it? So moving back towards Sunderland, I hope we have a better January than last season because a really good January could guarantee top 6. What are you talking about last January? We got Pierre bloody Ekwa, mate. Pierre Ekwa, come on, what a boy. Saying that, to be fair, Ekwa had his worst game in a while against Birmingham, actually, but fair play, we got away with it at least. But yeah, I wanted to talk about Sunderland's start the season. So obviously we've played 16 games. So let's look at the basic stats before going into a few more. Sunderland, so we've won 8, we've drawn twice, and we've lost 6 games. Funny, interesting fact, we haven't drawn a game at the Stadium of Light yet. Announcers drawn against Huddersfield. Yay. But in terms of goals, if you look at it in terms of goals scored, Dortmund says 100% on money. Man City's 100 plus breaches have been ignored so far. Money, unfortunately. Thane says Ekwa came good. What about bloody Lahadji and Anderson? Lahadji, I'll give you that one. Anderson, too soon to judge. All right. So if you look at it, my goals scored is quite interesting because we often talk about the fact that we don't have a forward scoring goals. And I do stand by it. I do believe that is something that we need to address and improve going forward. But let's look at it. So if you actually look at the goals scored, we are, I think it's the joint 4th most goal scorers of the division. There's only 3 teams, from what I can see in this table, that have scored more than us. And that's Ipswich top with 36 goals. Leicester joint second with Norwich with 29 goals. So, sorry, we'd be joint 3rd by the looks of it. Yeah, we're joint 3rd alongside Leeds and Southampton. So, it's funny. It's amazing the amount of goals that we score when we've got no centre-forward scoring. My uncle had the opinion when I was in Manchester and we were watching the Birmingham game, and he said that it doesn't matter as much as long as somebody is scoring. And I do definitely agree with that viewpoint. But I do think across the season, we are going to need to start seeing. Sorry, my hair's getting in the way. It's annoying me. We are going to need to start seeing a striker hitting. What's the word I'm looking for? We need to start having a striker hitting form, put it that way, in terms of the back of the net. Mind you, I would say I do like Russian. From what I've seen of him in the last 3 games, I think there's something there. I think he was very unlucky against Birmingham not to score. Swansea, fair enough, he missed a chance that really should have been at least on target. And Norwich, okay, he didn't have a great chance per se, but he had a hand in our second goal that day. And I think his general movement's excellent. I really do. Then he says, but let's be real though. Will Anderson play for it again for us? If we get promoted, absolutely not. I still don't get that signing. Thane, are you happy about anything? Come on. Yeah, but I do get your point. I mean, look, if we get promoted, then there's absolutely no way Anderson's going to play for us. If we don't get promoted, I don't see why he wouldn't be in the team. It depends how he progresses at Shrewsbury, doesn't it? You got to start somewhere. But yeah, so we've scored the joint third most goals, if I'm right, in the championship. So it's a weird one. So we've scored them. So we've scored the joint third most. In terms of goals conceded, everyone who knows me knows I love me defending and me clean sheets. Let's have a look. How many goals have we conceded? We have conceded 17 goals. So actually, in a general scheme of things, we haven't done too badly at the back. We are joined, so we conceded 17 goals alongside West Brom. So there's only, from what I can see, there's only a handful of teams that have conceded less goals than what we have. Leicester have conceded 10. Leeds have conceded 16. Bristol City have conceded 16. And I think that's it in terms of teams who've conceded less than we have. So 1, 2, 3. I think it's only 3. I think it's only 3 teams that have conceded less than Sunderland. I still think one have had to be a bit nitpicky because I'm doing what Thane does here, being nitpicky. But I'd like us to be conceding less goals because the one thing I have noticed is that we are still conceding the odd daft goal that I think we should be preventing. If I'm being perfectly honest, and a lot of the goals have been self-inflicted. Like if you look at Birmingham's a classic example where in the middle of the park, Ekwa gives the ball away when he runs into danger basically, and we lose the ball, and then Birmingham break on us fairly quickly, and I'll just call him Yoshi. Me and my uncle were calling the lad who scored for Birmingham Yoshi. Terrible defending, but I'm a bit more lenient with that one because Sealton and Triantis had never started, and Triantis didn't know he was starting until like 2 minutes before kickoff, did he? But I'm looking at the Norwich goal. Even though we won that game, the Norwich goal I think was avoidable. I think the second Stoke goal was really poor. The Leicester goal I think was really poor. But it's weird because if you take out the Borough game, I know you can't take out games, but for the sake of my argument, I'm going to. If you remove the 4 goals we conceded against Borough, we conceded 13 goals. And in that sense, we've probably not done too badly at the back. So, yeah, I'm never happy unless we keep clean sheets, even though we kept one against Swansea and I still wasn't happy. Then, personally, I've got nothing against Anderson. Yes, you do. When he came off the bench a few times, he looked okay, but we always knew he was going to be back up and hardly get a game. Okay, fair enough. I can see the argument. Then, hey, I am happy. It's the international break and we're in the top 6. Yeah, that's fair enough. Like I said, I mean, I was surprised that the results went in our favour after the Birmingham game. But I'll tell you, when we're on the subject of the Birmingham game, I'll quickly talk about Sealton and Triantis because obviously against Swansea, Ballard and O'Nien picked up their 5th yellow cards respectively and as a subsequent consequence missed the Birmingham game. How did people in the comments feel Sealton and Triantis did? I thought they did pretty well, considering that, again, that was his first start, and considering, and especially in Triantis' case, because as I alluded to before, until Sirkin got injured, he wasn't in the lineup to start. And once Sirkin got injured, then all of a sudden, oh yeah, by the way, there you go, you're chucked into the deep end. I thought they both did all right. There was a couple of shaky moments here and there, but I expected that because they've not started together. So that's why I'm a bit more lenient with the Birmingham goal. And if anything, I think there's probably the fault of Ekwa for running into danger and Dan Neil for letting his marker run into the box to score. Then, when we finally get back to the Prem, I promise not to moan too much. Well, we'll see. I'll hold you to that, but we shall find out. But in general, I mean, if you actually look at the Birmingham game, I think to touch on Birmingham a little bit more, I felt like a lot of what Birmingham did, because Birmingham did create chances, but I felt a lot of them were down to Sunderland's own unforced errors. I think a lot of them was down to. I think that Birmingham, when they did create things, it was down to Sunderland giving the ball away. It was down to misplaced passes and everything. And I think Although Birmingham again had opportunities, I think probably deserved to score on the day. I still felt Sunderland by a distance deserved to win. I still think we were comfortably the superior side. And I think Birmingham, if they give Rudy the time, I think Birmingham can very well come good. So it was good to probably play them when we did. Dortmund. Sealt looked quite good. Triantis was a bit shaky, but there's a player in there to play like that first game in the championship. Yep, definitely. And again, you got to bear in mind with Triantis, as I said before, he didn't know until 2 minutes before kickoff he was starting. I thought Triantis struggled a lot first half, but grew into the game. Sealt, I thought, was pretty solid. Didn't put a foot wrong, in my opinion. Fair enough. Acacia, I thought Sealt and Triantis played quite well against Birmingham. Yeah, I thought they did. All things considered, I thought they did. Actually, I'm curious to know, for people who are in the comments and people who are interacting, who was your man of the match against Birmingham? Mine was personally Job. I think not just for the fact he scored, but I think the fact is, I think his hold-up play was really good. I think his strength was really good. I think his football intelligence was really good. But I do get a lot of people giving it to Huggins, and I'll be very surprised if Huggins isn't mentioned in the comments. I thought Huggins had a really good game. And very quickly on Huggins, so happy for the bloke because he's not been able to get any consistency or momentum in terms of playing games because he's been out injured for 2 years. And for him to finally, I mean, it's at Serkin's expense, obviously, but I think that Huggins, you can't complain. Thane says Huggins for me, but Russian was close second. Yeah, I thought Russian was very good. So remains to be seen. I mean, I'm interested to see who everybody else says as man of the match. I mean, me personally, it was Job, but I do think it's. But in a way, this is what we want. We want people to be saying different people were man of the match because it means more people had a good game than didn't. David Phillips, I think Triantis will be good. Just needs work on his positioning. Yeah, okay, I can see that. I can see what you mean there. I think there were times where the Birmingham goal in particular, Sealt and Triantis were like really wide apart and were very. There was a huge gap for Birmingham to exploit, and they scored from that. Acacia says Job man of the match for me too. Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, I mean Birmingham, like I said, we deserve to win that. But if you look at the right, but so to sort of move on to the main topic, well, one of the main topics is the start of the season we've had. What do people think? So if I get the table back up again, when this decides it wants to do it, we have 26 points from 16 games. Dortmund, Rustian was great. Brilliant work rate up top and in defence. Got an assist and had a couple of good shots. Yeah, very good point. I completely forgot about that, where he assisted Job's goal. Job sideways moved to Sunderland, apparently. That's funny. Don't make me laugh. But anyway, I couldn't resist that. Some Birmingham fans, not all of them, but some were very, very unnecessarily bitter when they moved here. Thane says, Triantis looks good, strong, but he takes far too long on the ball. Again, you got to remember, first game, didn't know you were starting until 2 minutes. But again, that's something he will improve at, I'm sure. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised with Sealt and Triantis if at least one of them is Ballard's replacement if we don't get promoted in the near future. And by near future, I mean this season or next. But there you go. So 26 points from 16 games. I think one thing I would point out that I would like to see from Sunderland, we've lost 6 games out of 16. I've had to be a little bit picky, and it is nitpicking because there's not much to be negative about, in my opinion. But we've lost too many for my liking. I think you need to start turning defeats into draws. I think if you look at the games we've lost so far, Ipswich should have got at least a point, in my opinion. I think Ipswich did enough to warrant a point, but I think we should have got a point as well. Preston, I think we should have won. I thought Preston were really, really poor and were quite lucky to beat us. There was basically thanks to 2 big deflections that they beat us, but they're not going to complain, though, should they? Cardiff, battered for most of the game and ended up conceding a silly goal. Again, habit here, conceding daft goals. What was the next one? Borough, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's bitter or not, it's fact. It was impacted by the red card and the fact that Dan Neil was the player that got sent off, which meant we had no central midfielders, which you could put the blame on the club for that, for not getting another position, which is absolutely fair enough. And what was the game we lost since then? Stoke. I felt, even though a lot of people thought we were terrible against Stoke, I disagree. I didn't think we were particularly good, but I thought we were good. I thought we warranted getting a point. That's just the dog jumping onto the sofa. And apologies, guys, in advance if you can hear any dogs barking, because obviously it might be some post arriving or whatever it is. So if I have to get up for like 2 minutes to get some post, then forgive us in advance. But Stoke, I thought we deserved a point out of that game. Leicester, I thought we definitely should have got something out of. So if you actually look at the game, even though I do believe we have lost too many, I think if you look at the games we've lost, with the exception of Borough, we deserve something out of every single one of them, in my opinion. And it's only really Borough, which again, the big caveat is the red card, that I think has impacted the season. But see, this thing, but Thane said we possibly could have got something against Stoke. See, for me, we should have got something against Stoke. But personally, I thought we were awful. To be honest, so was Stoke as well. Right, Thane, I have interest. What makes you think we were awful at Stoke? Because if you actually look at it, we still had enough chances across the game to get something. Barr had a great chance in the first half. Ballard hit the post from a set piece, and Aushish had a chance where he headed over from 6 yards that should have been on target. Honestly, Stoke weren't that good. I think yes, in terms of if you're talking about having high standards, then yeah, you could argue we were awful based on high standards. But I didn't think we were awful at Stoke at all, far from it. But I've heard people agree with Thane, by the way. I might be in the minority here, but I thought we deserved a point in that game. Dortmund says, I know this sounds bitter, but the ref has cost us a few games. No, I don't think it's bitter at all. I think there's been a number of occasions where I think the referees have just been absolutely staggeringly bad. I look at Jared Gillett against Borough, and I think Dan Neil getting sent off that game was not what I had a problem with. I said this at the time and I stand by it. My problem wasn't Dan Neil getting sent off. My problem was the likes of Sam Greenwood or Josh Coburn somehow not getting sent off. That was what annoyed me because, Sam Greenwood, if I'm right, got booked for dissent in the first half and then did a similar challenge to Dan Neil's first yellow card on Seal, I think it was, in the second half. And where was his second yellow? Why didn't we see it? So, yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? Yeah, I think the refs are just absolutely atrocious. And even on Saturday, I think that even last Saturday, I think the referee was still poor for both sides. Then we had some good chances, but the basics from us was really poor at times. Far too slow, poor defending, and poor decision making. Effort was there, but the urgency wasn't. Well, urgency compared to what we're used to. But again, I agree we didn't do the basics well enough. But I don't personally think that means across the game we were terrible. I think you look at the Stoke 5-1 last year, we were terrible that day. If you look at Cardiff at home last season, that day we were really bad. But Stoke away this year, I didn't get that vibe. I think people overreacted. That's fine, by the way. Thane's entitled to his opinion, and if you disagree with me, then as long as you're respectful about it, I've got no problem with that. I'm just probably in a minority and I think Graham Falk from What the Falk Pod, which is a great podcast, by the way, check it out if you haven't already. He agreed. Sorry, his opinion was basically along the same lines as what mine was, that he felt we deserved something out of that game. But there you go. But my point is, with the exception of Middlesbrough, to bring it back on point, we've been in every single game. And even the games we have lost, I would argue with the exception of Borough, we shouldn't have lost any of them. Now, obviously, you can put that down to not finishing chances, or in my opinion, you put that down to the goals we've conceded. And even if you look at Stoke, if you look at Dortmund, the refs cost us a fair few games. I think the ref did cost us against Borough. Don't care what Borough fans say. It's fact. I think he did cost us. I think Stoke, the handball goal that somehow the ref or the linesman doesn't see, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I think what was the other one? There was a couple of other ones where the ref was particularly bad. Birmingham, yeah. To be honest, Birmingham, I think our corner for the first goal shouldn't have been a corner. Leandro Bacuna somehow doesn't get at least one yellow card, which is staggering to me. There's countless other ones. Where the refs have been particularly bad. But it proves again, let's get rid of this nonsense that we only mention the refs when we get beaten because we're bitter. No, that's a load of rubbish. We've mentioned referees when we've won games, and not just me on here. There's been countless podcasts, there's been countless YouTubers, whatever you want to say, whatever content creators of whatever description have mentioned the referees when we've won games. So let's get rid of this crap. To be honest, that we only mention them when we get beat because that's a total garbage in my opinion. Kevin Kidd, yeah, exactly. The ref was even bad when we beat Birmingham. Spot on. Norwich, there's another one. I think the referee was bad against Norwich. I actually think, to be fair, they didn't do much wrong for Norwich's goal that day. But again, it was just these little daft decisions that keep on going on. And don't get me wrong. See, I'm trying not to rant about referees, but I can't help it. I have no problem. Referees have a very, very hard job. That is absolutely fair enough. They have a hard job, and I wouldn't have the balls to do it. Absolutely. But where's this a thing now where referees are immune from criticism and we're not allowed to point out when we feel that they've had a poor game? Abuse, absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. And I think people need to learn to learn the difference between the two of them. Don't descend to the point where you cross the line and it descends into abuse. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. However, criticism should be fair. And I think it's the same way as me on YouTube here. I open myself up to criticism. As long as it's respectful and constructive, then that's absolutely fair enough. So that should be allowed. When it descends into personal insults and slagging people off, that's when I have an issue with it. But yeah, referees should be allowed to be criticised. Can we stop excusing them every single time? things that the officials are poor, but it works both ways because some decisions have come our way at times of season. Yes, it has, but I think it's gone against us more than it's gone for us. Um, if I'm being honest. Like, I do get what you mean that the officials are, but this is the thing. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying for 1 second we can't assess Sunderland's own performances because we should be able to as well. You have to be able to reflect and look at ourselves and say, what could we be doing better? What are we getting the basics right? Did we give the referee decisions to make? All that stuff. We absolutely have to look at ourselves. That should not be forgotten. I'm just sick of the idea that referees are on such a pedestal that if you criticize them at all, you get shot for it. And I think that's something that's got to change, in my opinion. It's not a Sunderland fan thing, by the way. It's a fan thing in general. Like I said, referees should be allowed to be criticised the same way players are, in my opinion. But there you go. Calm down, breathe. I went on for about probably 5 minutes about the referees. Actually, I want to ask anyone who's in the chat: do you think the referees were better in League One or the Championship? Because I'm starting to think they were better in League One. And I never for 1 minute thought I'd be saying that. When we went up, I thought, actually, you know what? The referees will be better in the Championship. Completely wrong. Couldn't believe it. But anyway, let's move on from the referees. Let's get back to talking about Sunderland, which I know is what people are probably here for. Yeah, if I assess the games that we've had, I think probably the best game we've had so far is obvious. Southampton 5-0. I think that day we were just... Yes, okay, that was a game where our chances happened to go in the back of the net, and I think that was a lot went in our favour that day. But make no mistake about it, we deserved to win that game, and by that scoreline as well. Obviously, the worst game was Borough, but there's mitigating circumstances behind it. I think if you actually, I mean, there's been fair few frustrating games. Obviously, every game we've lost, I think Swansea was incredibly frustrating. Kevin Keane, even the wife noticed, why didn't that player get at least a yellow card for kicking the hell out of Roberts? Because the referees are garbage, mate. And apparently Roberts gets a yellow card for complaining about it instead of Bakuna getting a booking for doing the challenge. Championship referees for you. But I want to see what people think now. So in the general sense, out of 10, how do you rate our start to the season so far? So this is 16 games where you've had a third of the season gone now, and we've got, another 2/3 of the season left. We've got 30 games after this in the regular season. Hopefully we have more games in the playoffs, unless we somehow miraculously get second, which isn't going to happen, I don't think. But I think if I had to give it a grade out of 10, I would say a good solid 8. I think a good solid 8 out of 10. I think improve a little bit defensively in terms of the goals were conceded before. And I think just learn to be a bit more clinical and get one of the strikers to start scoring. I think even if you get someone like Rusin getting 10 goals this season, then I think that's something that's going to be really encouraging. So I've got optimism for the rest of the season. I think we are, and I've stood by this consistently, that I actually think we're not a bad side. And I think people were jumping the gun way too quickly when we lost those 3 games in a row, because if you look at those 3 games, one of them was ruined by the referee. It sounds bitter, but it's fact in my opinion. That game heavily turned on the red card, and I stand by it. With Borough, if not for the red, we at least draw that game. And one of the games was at the league leaders. So I think it's easy to say we've lost 3 in a row, but you have to dig a little deeper and look into the context behind those games. And our performances in general haven't changed. I think a lot of them have been very good. Then 7 out of 10, only because we're in the top 6 right now. And when we come back, there's no excuse for us not to get 2 or 3 wins for our next few games. That is true, but what I would say is the season's a marathon, not a sprint. We have to remember that. Dortmund, 8 out of 10. Quite unlucky not to have won more. We were dominated by I don't think we'd be underdogs in the playoffs like last year. No, I don't think we would be either. Kevin Caden, it all depends on our next 4 games, 7 out of 10. Well, my question is, as of right now, before any more games are played, how do you assess the start of the season? For me personally, I agree with Dortmund. I think 8 out of 10 is fair. I think 7 out of 10 is the minimum you should be giving it. If you want to be objective about the start of the season. Unless you wanted to be in the top 2, then you could give it lower, I suppose. But for me, my expectation was playoffs this season. That's what I wanted. I wanted to prove last season wasn't a fluke, that we actually are a good side, regardless of whether Ahmad's there or not. We are a good side. And I'd say 8 out of 10. I think we're unlucky not to have got more points than what we have done already. And even in the games where we have lost, again, with the exception of Borough, I think in every one of them, the performance has been there in general. Maybe less so against Stoke, but I still think we deserve something out of that. Even if you take Borough and Stoke out of the equation, Ipswich, Preston, Cardiff and Leicester should have got something out of every single one of them. I know we didn't, but still, the performances were there. So I think we've actually done really well. The thing says, that's true, but the more points you have before January, the better and higher we are more likely to keep hold of Clark. Hopefully go for it in terms of new arrivals. David Phillips, I would rate the season a solid 7 and could Could change the squad around a bit more. I know we've had injuries, but I don't want our players to burn out or get injured. That is very true. I do agree with that one. Jared Palmer, greetings, Michael. Can't wait to play Manchester City next season in the Championship. Oh, I love that. Right, very quickly with what to address what Thane said. I do think I agree with him. It's definitely better to have more points before January. But again, the season doesn't end in January. It ends in May. And I think I would like us to, I think put it this way, for me, between now and Christmas, I want to try and get to 40 points if we can. I think so after Coventry, right 2 days before Christmas, I want to try and be around the 40-point mark, or at worst, just below it, because you want to try and keep yourself in the top six picture. Let's talk about Jack Clark for a minute, actually, because this is something that I've noticed quite a few times. My uncle said this as well, that he reckons there's a chance he'll go in January. Now, where's this assumption that he's going in January coming from? Because in my own opinion, but Athena said also have to remember the league is more competitive than last year. That is true, but we also have to remember that I think across the team we are better than what we were last season. We don't have as much flair as we did because Ahmad is a £25 million player, isn't he? But I think our defence is better. I think our midfield's better. I think obviously we've got to do a bit more depth. So I think we've got to remember that as well. We do have good quality ourselves. That doesn't change just because Ahmad's not here. I'm not, Thane hasn't said it does, but I'm just addressing it. But what I was going to say was, where's this assumption that Clark's going in January? Because if you actually look at it, what sense does it make? Even if I would imagine that unless we go on a really, really terrible run of form between now and the turn of the year, I'd be surprised if we're not at least just below the playoffs or in the hunt for a top six finish come January. So with that in mind, what sense does it make from Sunderland's point of view to sell Clark? Yes, people can say, well, you can get a lot of money for him. However, January is a ridiculously inflated market, even more so compared to the summer. And that's what Jared's just made a point that I completely agree with. Clark, though, would only leave if we get a huge offer, I think, in terms of price, I mean. Right, put it this way. If we don't get 25 to 30 million, don't entertain it, because you've got to bear in mind Tottenham have a big sell-on clause. I don't know. I think Tottenham have a huge sell-on clause. We do have to remember that. But if anything, that's more reason not to sell him in January. I just think with Clark, while you're in the middle of a top six push, it doesn't make sense to sell him, because then people will argue you're forfeiting your chances of the top six, which is fair enough. But I just think unless Clark gets injured between now and the end of the season, surely to me it makes more sense to keep him till the end of the season. And then you actually look at it and say, all right, then, if we keep him until next summer and we don't go up and then he's sold, then that's fair enough. I've got no complaints with that. I would be angry if we sold him in January, because I just think it doesn't make any sense. And you've got to remember as well, he could continue if he doesn't, again, assuming he doesn't get injured this season or doesn't get injured for long spells, he could continue his great run of form and increase his price tag even more, because he's still got another 2 years left on his deal after this season. So for me, Sunderland are in a pretty good position with his contract, where we're not in a position where we have to sell him yet. Obviously, again, if we don't go up this season, then I think we're going to have, whether people like it or not, tough luck. You're going to have to accept that Clark's going to go next summer if we don't go up. And I've got no problem with that, on the condition that we, A, get the right fee for him, B, that he leaves respectfully, and C, that whatever money we do get is reinvested correctly into the squad. Then it says, we're doing okay. I think personally we're doing pretty well, but there you go. But personally, I disagree. I don't think we're better, or either the same or slightly weaker. Not just the Diallo situation. We're missing the leadership qualities of Evans and Ba. But you could maybe argue. I disagree on Evans. I think Neil and Ekwa have been really, really good this season. I think we're not missing him as much as what you might think we are. I can see what you mean. I don't think we're weaker than last year. I really don't. Could I say we're stronger than last year? Well, if you look at, it's not just me, Phil Smith from the Sunderland Echo says this as well, that if you actually look that across the whole team, the dynamic of the team, I think, is a bit better. If you look at it in terms of the players we've got, yeah, I probably can't argue we're stronger than last season. But again, I think just because you could argue we're not stronger than last season doesn't mean we're not going to finish in the top six. If we're not in the top six come January and a bit of £20 million comes in, I think they'll sell him. But personally, I think he'll be here till at least the end of the season. But who knows in football? Look, you're right. I might be wrong on Jack Clark. I have absolutely no idea. There's every chance he could go in January. He could absolutely go in January. O'Neill centre-back is a massive downgrade to Bart, in my opinion. That's your opinion, and that's fair enough. I disagree with it. I think O'Neill's done really... I think on the whole, people like to remember O'Neill for the mistakes he's made at centre-half. And I think a lot of people conveniently forget he's saved us quite a few times in that position as well. I wouldn't have got rid of Bart personally. but I don't think, I think to call '09 a massive downgrade, I think it's a bit harsh personally. But again, Dane's entitled to his opinion. He respects mine. I respect his, even if we disagree, which is shock, happens quite a bit. In my opinion, I think with yeah, it's a tricky one because look, I could be wrong. Jack Clark could very well go in January. I can't say just because I don't think he will doesn't mean he won't. That there's every chance that could happen. I just think logically, what sense does it make? Even if the money, unless you get 25 between 25 and 30 million, I'd even probably argue pushing towards 30. Unless you get that, is it really worth selling him? I don't think so. Not when you could have a chance of getting promoted yourself. And then again, at the worst case scenario, if you don't go up and his form continues to be great, then you could command a bigger fee in the summer, can't you? Or best case scenario, we win the playoffs and go up. Then it says, of course, we are the disagree buddies. There, what's new there, mate? What's new there? But again, this is what I mean. I'd like to think Thane knows that I can disagree with him, but not be a dick about it, basically. I try not to swear too much on here, but I think he knows that I'm not going to be a bellend towards him because, and I likewise, I think he's the same towards me. You can I think we're living proof. You can disagree, sometimes passionately disagree, but it doesn't mean you have to go around insulting people or insinuating they don't know what they're talking about. So, apparently we are looking at a Ghanaian centre back from Sweden. Apparently a loan with a £3 million option, with a £3 million option to buy. That's interesting. But here's one, right? So if I'm looking at all the other comments, Casey put one. When I saw the rumours of Jack Clark leaving in January on every social media, the club said we just can't afford to give him a new contract, so he hasn't decided yet where he's going to stay. Casey, because obviously Crystal Palace is still wanting him after Zaha left, and Brentford are wanting him as they're selling Tony in January for 100 million. Right? They haven't said they're going to sell him in Casey. What they mean is that they value him at 100 million. There's a difference between valuing someone at that price and then selling them at that price. I think if you actually look at it, also Celtic QPR and Borough are looking at him as well. Sorry, I forgot his name. Random Swedish centre, random Ghanaian centre back. We'll just call him that. Random. You know what? Right. Yeah. I think with Clark, unless, like I said, unless you get 25, 30 million, it's just not worth selling, in my opinion. It's just really not. Like, I just think you're weakening your squad considerably. January already would be an inflated window in that. And if we sold Clark, people would know we have the money and start charging stupid prices. Hopefully it's the next John Benson. Well, okay, well, moving on to January, because we've got about, I'll say 15, 20 minutes left. So I'm going to try and be on for an hour. What do people think in terms of what we need in January? What do people think we need in? Let's say the aim is to solidify top six and to really push ourselves on. What do people think we need? Me personally, I think central midfield is the big option. I know I've contradicted myself earlier saying I don't think we miss Corey Evans, but I also think how can I phrase it? I think we can't rely on Dan Neil and Pierre Ekwa to not get injured or to be suspended at any point. I think we need to give them a little bit of cover. I agree. Daniel Moore's just agreed with me. Yeah, I agree. We need a centre mid. I really do think we need a centre mid. I think we need one just to give Neil and Ekwa just a little bit of cover, a little bit of help, and just to because we've got to remember there's still a lot of games left this season where it's going to be Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So yeah, I think that's a huge thing to just give them a bit of help and a bit of cover. If I had to think of anywhere else, maybe a fullback if Elise and Sirkin keep being injured. Other than that, I mean, maybe a striker, depending on what happens if any of them start scoring or not. Me personally, yeah, winger. That's all the thing says. More experienced centre back, CDM, winger, and maybe another striker, especially no strikers got off the mark. I agree with all of that except the centre half. I don't think we need a centre half. I think we are. Well, actually, with experience one wouldn't go amiss, would it? I disagree personally. I don't think we need a centre half. I think that's out of the four positions that Thane's just mentioned. Hang on, it is four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Out of the four positions Thane's just mentioned, I think centre back's the least important of the four of them. The other three, I think, could do with being prioritised a bit more. Right. Let's talk about this lad because there's no way we can't not speak about him. Amad Diallo. Yeah, I'm not singing, I promise. I'm not singing again. Amad Diallo. Right. I want to know what people's thoughts are on this. Do people think there's a good chance he'll come back in January? Because I said, you know me, I constantly said throughout the summer, Thane says, why are you saying centre-back midfielder? Are we having a centre-back midfielder thing, are we? I do what he meant. Central defensive midfield is the main priority because that's something that hasn't been addressed since Evans got injured. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Out of the four of them, I think that's the most important one. All right, Amad Diallo. In the summer, I was consistent on YouTube and on social media on Twitter, saying that I don't see Ahmad returning because I think, yeah, I mean, Jared, look, if he comes back, I agree. It's only a loan deal. There's no way it happens permanently. Not in January anyway. I would say that in the summer, I was consistently saying I don't think Ahmad will come back because I think Man United would have wanted to loan him out to a Premier League club if they weren't going to use him themselves. And because of if he'd loaned out in the summer, he's got a couple of months where he can afford to bed in and settle in. In January, when you've only got 3.5 months or 3 to 4 months left till the end of the season, Ahmad doesn't have the luxury and the time to go and be able to settle down and settle into a new environment or another club. And as a result, to protect Man United, to protect their own investment, again, assuming they aren't going to use him, then they'll think, right, send him out to Sunderland because I think it would make sense for him to come back here. Not just for the fact he said that apparently he wants to come back, assuming if he goes out on loan, I mean, but also because Man United protect their investment. Because if he comes back to us, he's playing regularly unless he gets injured. He is known by the fans. He's loved by the club. He's loved by Mowbray. He's loved by the players. He just knows the environment and knows the overall picture here. And I think it makes sense from Man United's point of view for 3 months, 3 to 4 months to send him here. Does that mean he will come back? No, it doesn't. It depends how. It depends if he's in Eric Ten Hag's plans, assuming he's still there, of course, in January. And if he's not, if Ten Hag isn't there, then is he going to be in the new manager's plans or the new head coach or coach, whatever the term is these days at Man United? So I think my gut instinct says yes, he will come back, but that's a gut instinct. It's not based on any knowledge. It's just gut instinct. So and gut instinct can be proven wrong pretty quickly. So in my opinion, sorry, I think it makes sense from all parties to get Ahmad back. I think the issue would be, I suppose, is does then Bellingham come out of the team? Does then what happens to Aushish? But I just think if a player of Ahmad's quality is available and he wants to come back on loan and Man United are willing to let that happen, then I think it makes sense to do it. And you got to remember as well, injuries happen, or with the case of Job, he could be burnt out because we've seen this before, where young players are getting played across the course of the season without getting a rest, and you look what ends up happening there. Burnout does happen. We've seen it in League One. So the League One season we got promoted with Dan Neil and Dennis Serkin. Let's quickly have a look. Occasionally, I think Ahmad might come back, but it depends with Ten Hag keeping him until he gets a start from his injury in the Premier League. It just depends whether Man United lose the next games. Yeah, possibly. Let's have a look. As long as Mowbray is still in charge, there's every chance Ahmad will return because he's always said Sunderland is his first choice, even ahead of Premier League sides and Leeds. Yeah, there's a possibility there. The only thing I would say to counter that is ultimately it's not his choice where he goes, is it? Well, it kind of is. He can have a say in where he goes, obviously, but Man United will ultimately be the one if Man United are the ones that make the decision, aren't they? Basically, occasionally, or when Ten Hag gets sacked. Never know these days. Then there's always a buyback clause for Lahaji. That's a joke, by the way. Yeah, no thanks. Jared, I think a new manager and too much change for Diallo would massively hurt his development. If Ten Hag quits, I'd be worried for the lad. Possibly. Mowbray would help him if Ten Hag is sacked. The problem is, if Ten Hag gets sacked, then does an incoming head coach then rate Ahmad and want to use him in their team? In which case, our chances of getting him back deplete greatly, don't they, unfortunately? Dortmund, I can see Ahmad returning if Clark goes. See, I can see Ahmad returning even if Clark stays. I think it would. I think obviously there's a better chance it happens. I think there's a better chance that happens if Clark goes. But yeah, I mean, I think for me we should be pushing for a loan deal anyway. Then Aushish is someone that definitely deserves a start because that lad is definitely talented. This is what I like what we're doing. That even if Ahmad doesn't come back, we have got options in that position. And by the way, don't be surprised if, say, someone like Pritchard goes in January, because it might be that Pritchard's wages getting off the books facilitates whatever portion of Ahmad's wages we would pay to be facilitated. I don't want Pritchard to go, by the way, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if he did go. Then, would that? Yeah, that's true, because Man United would prefer a loan to a top tier league or Prem for his development. Yeah, that's true. I think Aushish was brought in as the long-term Pritchard replacement. Yeah, probably. Yeah, but that's the thing. But as I said before, though, I think with Ahmad, it's a case of he wants to come back here if he's loaned out, and that you'd like to think should play into Sunderland's hands. However, I think there's more chance of it happening in January for the reason I mentioned before, because of the fact that he will come in and only have three and a half to 4 months. Man United won't want him to settle in. They want him to get there and get in straight away and play. And barring injury, he would play. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Dorman, I just see an issue with game time. Bar, Aushish, Dak, Pritch, Job, Roberts, Clark, Bennett competing for 3 slots. Well, if you look at all of the players you've just mentioned there, the only ones that I would say that are probably really competing is Clark, Job, Roberts, Pritchard, Aushish, maybe. Dak's constantly injured. I think Bar's a good squad player, but personally I wouldn't start him. And Bennett, I don't think is near the first team picture at the moment, if I'm honest. I do get your point. There is definitely an issue with game time. Maybe that's one area where we are very well stocked. But I think if a player of Ahmad's quality is available to come back to Sunderland for the second half of the season, it just doesn't make sense not to do it, in my opinion. And I imagine people will probably agree with that. But yeah, still. He says, I'd be devastated because Pritch is my guy. Yeah, you loved him, don't you? Love him, don't you? But I've accepted he'll be gone at either January or at the end of the season. Yeah, that's a possibility. I think it's probably likely he's going to go. Whether in January or the end of the season. Me personally, I would keep Pritchard. But, we're not going to keep him beyond this season, are we? Bennett will go out on loan because Mowbray doesn't rate him right now. I think for me, letting Bennett go out on loan would be beneficial to him. One thing I'd like to see is him to bulk up a little bit and get a bit of physicality into him. And I think that's why I think loaning to him a League One club, as long as the environment's right, I think would really suit him quite well. But yeah, I just know. I think with Ahmad, it would just make sense to get him back if we can. And if we don't get him back, like Dorman's just mentioned, Bar, Aushish, Dak, Pritch, Job, Roberts, Clark, Bennett. We've got a lot of options in those positions. So I actually think there's I think there's a chance Ahmad comes back, but we'll wait and see. The good thing is if he doesn't come back, then I think the likes of Aushish and Job could compete between them for the number 10 spot. And obviously Ahmad's not a sorry, my throat's hurting from probably talking too much. No, my throat's tickling. But I think with Ahmad, yeah, if he doesn't come back, then you've got a lot of players who can fulfill those roles. Ahmad's not strictly a number 10, is he? He drifts a lot out wide with Roberts because those two had a link with each other. I actually wonder, and this is maybe me being a conspiracy theorist here, I wonder if Roberts signing a new contract is an indication Ahmad's going to come back. Because Ahmad clearly enjoyed playing alongside Roberts, the same as vice versa, that Roberts enjoyed playing with Ahmad. But I wonder, because Roberts has been tied down, am I reading too much into this, or is there something in that? Maybe there might be something in that we've assured Roberts Ahmad's coming back in January. Fair play if so. Also, we have to think as well that Bar and Aushish might be going to the Africa Cup of Nations because they're both changing their nationalities. All right, then. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah, could Ahmad go to the Africa Cup of Nations? That's another thing I forgot to think about. Jared Palmer's out. I'm worried if Patterson gets injured. I don't trust Bishop. Again, though, I haven't seen anything of Bishop play, so I don't think I can really make a judgment on him. But maybe a backup goalkeeper, like an experienced one, I think is one where I wouldn't complain with. And my thoughts on the experience thing. I think people make too much of an issue of it, but I do think experience in certain positions wouldn't go amiss. Jared Palmer, Vito, is he a free agent? In which case, maybe that'll happen. Didn't we try to get Vito in League One? The start of the season where we got promoted, where Thane's favourite head coach, Lee Johnson, was in charge. Obviously, I know it's not him doing the signings, it's Speakman. Oh, sorry. I went 53 and a half minutes without yawning. I didn't get much sleep last night, but Vito at Lille is as third choice. Okay. Well, we'll see with that one. I know this isn't Sunderland related, guys. What do you guys think of Aaron Ramsdale not getting a start for Arsenal this season since his missus had a baby? Yeah, I get that. There's things that are more important than football, to be fair. But if that's the case, why be on the bench? Yes, that's one way to look at it. Casey says, and Riot is the first choice for Arsenal now. Okay. Thing. Oh, is it? Must have transferred. Okay. Yeah, we'll wait and see with that one. January's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening. But I think where I will go back to a point Thane made before, where the more points you've got now going into January, I think there's a bigger chance that we can attract better players, because then they'll look at it and go, oh, hang on a minute. And when I say better players, I mean players that can come in and play now. Even if it's like a 21, 22, 23-year-old that's got a bit, that's got to have some game time and is ready to come in and make an impact. Um, we're more likely to attract that if we're in the top six or just below it. So yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left. So let's see. Let's quickly look. I don't think there's any comments that I've missed. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that there's still 17 or about over a dozen of you watching. To be honest, so thanks very much. That's much appreciated. Let's have a quick look. And hopefully some fringe Prem players that's got some experience would be ideal and a huge bonus. Hopefully, we'll find that out. One of my mates keeps going on about Kiefer Moore, that he would like to see someone like him come in, and I wouldn't be against that if it was a loan deal. But I just don't think Sunderland as a model will go for that. But again, if one of the strikers starts scoring, then it's less of an issue, isn't it? Yeah. Right, cool. One last point before we start to wrap it up. Let's look ahead to our next few games. In fact, here's a challenge to see. Let's have a look. So, how many games have we got left before the turn of the year? Tom Hodgson, I believe Sheesh will be in the starting lineup soon. Okay, yeah, possibly. I think there's Tony Mowbray's kind of alluded to that, hasn't he? Dave says, I was really hoping that Crespo deal on deadline day, but unfortunately didn't happen. It might happen in January. Depends. I don't know if is it Fenerbahce he plays for. I don't know whether he's actually. We'll see if that ends up getting resurrected, that deal or not. Acacia, because when I was talking on Twitter the other day, Aaron Ramsdale's dad was absolutely fuming. He's not getting to start in the Premier League. Well, we'll wait and see. I mean, I'm not personally too fussed about Arsenal, but right. So ahead to the new year, we have got Plymouth away, Huddersfield at home, Millwall away, West Brom and Leeds both at home, Bristol City away, Coventry at home, Hull away, Rotherham away. So that's 9 fixtures we've got before the turn of the year. How many points out? How many points out of the next? Let's go the next 4. So you've got Plymouth away, Huddersfield at home. Who's the next one? Millwall away, West Brom at home. Out of those 4 games, what's an acceptable points tally for you at a minimum? And try to be realistic. I know people are going to go 12. We're not going to get 12. And that's why I keep mentioning the fact that, look, me saying we're not getting 12, it's not me being negative. I think it's just being realistic. We aren't going to, it's very unlikely we're going to win all 4 games and not drop any points. Then it says 7 or 8. I'd say that's about the minimum we should be getting out of the next 4. If our players apply themselves, we should be getting that as a minimum. Jared Palmer, 8 to 10. I think obviously West Brom's quite tricky, but I think we're better than West Brom. I do. I actually genuinely think, apart from the relegated clubs, maybe possibly Ipswich, I genuinely don't see anyone who's better than Sunderland. I really don't. I think we're probably the 5th or 6th best, between the 4th to 6th best team of the division. I really do. I think, weirdly, I think Plymouth is the game out of the next 3 where I think we're most likely to drop points. Because Plymouth, although they concede quite a lot, they score a lot. And I think at home, I think home park's actually quite a difficult place to go. But at the same time, if our aim is to be in the top 6, then games like this, you need to be winning, don't you? But it's not as easy as that. I think Plymouth is one where I wouldn't complain if we drew that game as long as we beat Huddersfield and Millwall. If you did that, if you got 7 points out the next 3, then I would take that. West Brom and Leeds at home, obviously, they're 2 tricky fixtures, but I think, hang on a sec, Plymouth and Huddersfield are must-wins. Millwall and West Brom could do either way. See, I'd swap Plymouth with Millwall. I think Millwall, I'd be more annoyed if we didn't beat them Plymouth. I know it sounds weird because, I mean, I suppose you could say on paper Millwall's squad's better, but I just think Plymouth are playing better at the minute, and I think it's going to be a trickier game. I think Plymouth is going to be a trickier game than people think it will be. Casey, Millwall is going to be proper tough to go to. Well, I'm not going to it, so it doesn't bother me. But yeah, I think the next 4, I think about 7 or 8 is probably about right. But we'll wait and see. I think personally for me, like I said, I think after the next 7 games, I would say 40 points is what I'd like us to be on. So what we're on 26. So that's 14 points I want us to aim for. So that's what 4 wins, a couple of draws, and a defeat. I think the defeat is most likely to come against Leeds, but obviously it just depends. We'll deal with that when we come to it. Right, guys, I think we might end up leaving it there, to be honest. Dane says, but no one typical Sunderland will drop points against the likes of Plymouth, Huddersfield, and Huddersfield and Millwall, but will beat West Brom and Leeds. Yeah, it would just be classic Sunderland all over, wouldn't it? Guys, thanks so much for everyone who was watching. I thought it was just nice to come along and just chat for an hour and just, well, me yap on and people chat in the comments. I always look forward to Leeds, especially because of the history with them. I think that game's going to be a real test of our credentials, put it that way. But yeah, thanks very much, guys, for everyone who watched. And Dorman says, class stream. Thank you very much. Daniel Moore, cheers. Like honestly, guys, everyone who watched and commented, thank you very much. It still amazes me that I get the support I do. And yeah, the next time you'll probably see me, unless something happens in the next week with Sunderland, the next time you'll see me is a match reaction for the Plymouth game. Job House, at least a must win for me. Hate them, and it'll show the rest of it honestly in it. Yeah, maybe. Then he says, good job, catch you later. Thanks very much to everyone. Means a lot. You absolute legends. And enjoy your international break, whatever you're going to be doing. And just have a great weekend. See you for Plymouth. Take care, everyone. Love yous all lots. Thank you to every single person who commented and watched. And see yous all later. How are the lads?